Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers begin their road trip with a 5-1 loss to the Calgary Flames, a team that has the worst record in the NHL. So now that's back-to-back games in which the Rangers lost to a team that at the time had the worst record in the league. The Sharks last game, and now the Flames. And not for nothing, the team the Rangers lost before that was now the Rangers on a 3-game losing streak, the Minnesota Wild. Well, yeah, they have the third worst record in the league. And who's tied with them for the third worst record in the league? And again, this is points percentage. The New York Rangers. And arguably, and look, I call the Flames the worst team in the league because of the fact that, again, it's more of a statistical thing. Although I do think the Flames probably aren't that good. Whereas in the case of the Sharks, there's actually like some hope and promise with a team like that, with the young stars that they have. But from this Ranger team, yeah, they are one of the very worst teams in the league. And it's going to be hard for you to convince me otherwise on that. Rangers dropped to 3-5-2 through 10 games. And this is just a terrible performance. It's just, this is not a good hockey team. It's just not. And for a while there, they were playing, even though they weren't winning, they were playing well. Like, I'll give them that. Even though, look, I had concerns during that time. Also, they were playing a good brand of hockey. Well, now that's 3 straight games where they're not playing well against competition that is not some of the league's best. It's just, right? Like, we know it's not. I mean, even home against Minnesota, a team that's struggling with injuries and things like that was not a well-played game either. So even though the Rangers had road success, that goes away too here. Rangers were 3-0-1 on the road, and they lose to a Calgary team that was on an 8-game losing streak. They lost to a San Jose team that was on a 17-game losing streak. Calgary only won a shootout win the first game of the season. So Calgary had not won a game of regulation or overtime this season until they beat the Rangers. Handily, I might add. Calgary deserved this win by far. And the Rangers came out flat, as they've done many times. It's going to be a long, long season. I don't think there's that many solutions. There just aren't. And look, like, Mike Sullivan's not going anywhere. He's going to be here. And I think possibly for a while. And that's a conversation for another day. And he has his flaws as well. Again, I wasn't the biggest fan of the Sullivan hiring, but like, this is a fucking roster problem. The core of this team is not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not even close. Like, Noah Laba, congrats to him. He scored his first NHL goal in this game. He was the best player on the ice for the Rangers by a pretty wide margin, I might add as well. And you know what? As much as the bottom 6 isn't very good for the Rangers, and let's just keep it in terms of forwards, right? Because, I mean, the defensemen, they deserve blame as well. But I want to keep it in terms of maybe not even so much forwards and defensemen, the quote-unquote star players. They are the biggest problem with this team. I mean, like, again, we can speak to the fact, and this is true, like the fact that Sherry and Radish, the fact that they are in the top 6 and they were in this game. Yeah, that is bad. And that's an easy thing to go to. I get it. Like, that's not good at all, right? And, the lines in this game, it had Panarin with JT Miller and originally with Radish. Then about midway through the game, it changed to Sherry. And then it was Zibanejad with Lafreniere. And again, beginning it was Sherry, and then it went to Radish. And so it had the third line of Cooley with Laba and Brennan Othman. So Brennan Othman was actually called up because Matt Rempe is out. Matt Rempe got hurt in the fight with Ryan Reeves. He's not on the trip. They say there's a chance that he might join the team by the end of the trip. I'm skeptical of that. I don't think that we'll see Matt Rempe until the Rangers get back at the very least. And in the fourth line, or whatever you want to call it, was Carrick centering Edstrom and Parsonen, with Johnny Brodzinski remaining as an healthy scratch. All that to say, the core of this team is terrible. It's aging. It's slow. And it's just not very good, right? So, you want to talk about JT Miller, who really was named captain way, way sooner than it ever should have been. And JT Miller, he'll be making his return to Vancouver. We'll see next game. We'll see if that can get him going. I don't think it will, but that'll be a big storyline going into the next one. He's been fucking dreadful. Artemi Panarin has been basically a no-show except for a couple games this season, he's basically just been a shell of his former self, and he is who he is at this point. Alexis Lafreniere, like he, I mean that's a bust. That's a bust of a number one overall pick, and you don't want to declare it that way, but what is this now? Is this year six for Lafreniere? Yeah, this is the beginning of his sixth season. Yeah, I think we know who he is as well. And he has been a massive disappointment for this team. Mika Zibanejad, in this game, he fans on a puck as he's done a lot with someone on the power play. What happens? Team goes back the other way and scores. So for Zibanejad, and you're stuck with that contract. Like that's the problem there. At least Panarin, like he'll be gone soon enough. Artemi Panarin will not be a Ranger at the start of next season. So at least you could feel okay about that. And yeah, so it's just this team. And look, I don't want to. I really don't believe this is an overreaction, right? I don't like to do that. I don't. But really, like this team's got major, major problems. And sure, Vincent Trocheck. Look, it doesn't sound like he's coming back soon. That's the first thing. But when he does come back, because he will come back at some point, yeah, will that help things out a little bit? Sure, it will. It will. But this team doesn't have a whole lot of talent. I mean, just look at the defensemen. Look at that. I mean, you have a second pair, or whatever you want to call it, right? Like, let's just leave Gavrikov and Fox out of it for now. And even that has a conversation to it, but let's just for this exercise not even discuss them. Like, Matthew Robertson, Will Borg, and then Carson Soucy, Braden Schneider. That's not good. That's not good as defensemen 3 through 6. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find much worse throughout the league. Maybe it's not the very worst, but it's pretty fucking close. It's bad. It's really bad. And now Shesterkin, look, he gave up 6 goals last game, he gave up 5 today. Now, look, I said in the San Jose game that most of those goals weren't his fault. This game, look, this is not on Igor at all. Igor is the best player on this team. Not even close. But look, yeah, there was probably a goal or two that maybe you want to have back here. But when they play the way they did, it wouldn't have mattered who was back there. So let's discuss this kind of from start to finish. And again, just total embarrassment. I can't say enough how, last year, the Rangers had a similar situation where in the same week, I believe it was back-to-back games, they lost to Chicago and Nashville, the teams that had the worst, either the least points or points percentage in the league at that time, right? So it's one of those things the Rangers played Chicago with the worst record. Chicago beats them. So now all of a sudden Nashville's in last and then Nashville beats them. That's what we're talking about here with San Jose and Calgary. And in the case of Calgary, they're pretty fucking bad. I mean, really, that was a team that was averaging less than 2 goals a game in the first 9 games of their season. And they put up a 5 spot against the Rangers. And it's their first home win, the Rangers. The Rangers, they're seeking their first win at home. I don't know when the fuck that's going to happen. I really don't, because they don't go back home for over another week. And the first game they play at home against Carolina. So good luck there. But the Rangers get off to another shit start. And there's just no excuse for that. But I also don't want to make a big deal about it. Like they just weren't that good overall, because JT Miller and Zibanejad, it's like, oh, like the bad start. Yeah, the bad start was bad. However, you did lead the first period down 1, and it could have turned into a Montreal game where they were down 2-0, made it 2-1 fairly quick in the first, and eventually won the game. So, as much as I agree, inexcusable start, you maybe just weren't even that good all game. But they were outshot 12-5 in the first, and in the first period, Nazem Kadri scores the second goal of the season from Huberdeau and Hanley at 142. Just way too much room to maneuver in the offensive zone for Nazem Kadri, who basically, it's a give and go with him and Huberdeau. I don't know where Carson Soucy was going. Zibanejad was someone in the vicinity. Will Cooley. This was during a line change where you had part of the third line plus Zibanejad as the center on at that time. But again, just a real lackadaisical defensive structure right there for the Rangers. And Kadri scores to make it 1-0. Then at 4:16, Matthew Robertson cross-checks Blake Coleman for a penalty. Matthew Robertson's play has dipped. And look, like that was to be expected. He was playing way over his head. It's still a good story, but Matthew Robertson, and look, his ice time kind of reflected that a bit. Only played 14:32. Not to say fucking Carson Soucy played, and Carson Soucy was worse. Carson Soucy was terrible, but he actually played more than Robertson. And maybe part of that is the fact that Robertson takes this 2-minute penalty, but even still, um, for whatever the reason, he got more action than Robertson, which hadn't really been the case, I think, in recent games, but maybe they were trying to work Soucy back in slowly off the injury. Either way, Rangers do kill off that Flames power play. And, Ranger PK has probably been, and again, I don't have the stats to back this up. I apologize if I'm wrong here, but the PK has been decent. I don't think to myself that I've had a major problem with them in this first 10 games, but so I'm trying to find some positives. And then at 9:21, Kevin Ball scores his first goal of the season from Frost and Kadri. And this was a situation where Alexis Lafreniere basically screens Igor. Now, look, like, would I still have liked Igor to have had it? Yeah, but in the context of if he really didn't see it because Lafreniere was screening, then what can he really do? And so it's just, why is Lafreniere doing that? And he wasn't done. Lafreniere was not done as far as defensive zone mishaps. Again, Soucy and Schneider were on for this one as well. And that's a bad pair. See, I mean, I would really maybe start reconsidering if you want to keep Gavrikov Fox, I might start reconsidering the combinations to see, again, and if that means inserting Valkyrie in the lineup, fine. If it doesn't, that's okay too. I'm not saying you have to do that exactly, but I don't know. Just, I don't, specifically, I don't know. Soucy Schneider, I just don't like that pairing. So yeah, again, a shot by Ball that Lafreniere basically just does a flyby past Igor, and it's 2-0 Calgary. But 10 seconds after that goal, Rangers respond. Noah Laba scores his first goal of his NHL career, assisted by Cooley and Gavrikov, off of the faceoff win at center ice. Cooley is able to, bank it off the boards, and Laba beats, I believe, Mackenzie Weegar, and Laba shoots and scores past Dustin Wolf. And so, it was a good response right there. And all right, maybe the Rangers can find a way against a bad Calgary team. But no, that was the only goal they'd score all night. But Noah Laba was good in this game. And he's been a little bit quiet lately, but that's good to see. It's things like that you need. It is, prospects and young players that you're going to need to see things from. And Laba has been one of the few bright spots to this campaign. And so the Rangers would be lucky to be trailing only 2-1 at the end of the first. I mean, they almost gave up another goal at the end of the period. It was that shit again. Almost. But luckily, a shot went off of Borgen's skate and didn't go in. If he wasn't there, it's probably 3-1. So we go to the second. And look, the Rangers' play improved naturally based on how bad the first was. Again, I didn't think they were amazing. They did have some real grade A opportunities. I'll fucking tell you that. Some real big ones. And at 7:39, Mika Zibanejad holds the stick of Park. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if I did not. But Zibanejad does take a penalty, bad penalty, offensive zone penalty, but he does get a chance out of the box to score. A little bit of, I guess, somewhat of a breakaway. I mean, by the time he got the puck, he was close in on Wolf. He makes a move, he doesn't score. You need to cash in on the opportunities. JT Miller earlier in the game, I think at this point, it must have been either before Calgary got their first goal or right after. I can't remember. It was within the first couple minutes of the game. Miller has a chance and just shoots it wide. Doesn't even put it on net. So the score is still 2-1. And then this was the big backbreaking goal. And look, the Rangers had some chances, but Brennan Othmann is all alone right in front. And Noah Laba is kind of like slightly to the right of Othmann. Othmann had a chance a little bit earlier as well. It took a shot. I think it might have went wide. Like Othmann, look, that line was playing relatively well. But Brennan Othmann, who still does not have an NHL goal, and it's a thing at this point. It has to be in his head. Like, it is. For the fact that Brennan Othman probably made his NHL debut, I want to say, I'm trying to think. I feel as if he played a couple of games a couple seasons ago. I want to get this one right. I don't think he made his debut last year, but let me just confirm that real quick. Right, he played 3 games. It wasn't much, but right, he played 3 games in 23-24. So the point is, it's spanning a while to the point where Brendan Othman made his NHL debut. He played 22 games last year, didn't score. Now, look, like, to be honest with you, Brendan Othman, even though he didn't score last year, like, he wasn't, there were some games where he looked okay. Like, look, he has not been nearly good enough. And we're probably talking about another first round bust. I mean, not in the way of Lafreniere. That's the number 1 overall pick status. But Brendan Othman was seen as someone that could really be something, and he's probably not going to be. That's the sad truth with Brendan Othman. He's still young, but he does turn 23 in January. He's not quite the young prospect he was. All that to say, Brendan Othman has a chance right in front, and he decides to give a hard pass to Laba, and nothing comes of it. I mean, you gotta shoot that, but you gotta do something better than that. That's bad. And so now Calgary goes down the other way, off of the miss, and Carson Soucy gets caught up ice. Othman doesn't do a great job of getting back, and he basically leaves the middle of the ice open for Sharangovich, who scores. Sharangovich's first goal of the season from Zary and Farabee at 12:28 to give Calgary a 3-1 lead. And look, this was one that Igor, I would have liked for him to have, even though it was a great chance. It's one that Igor would want. I mean, if you ask Shesterkin, it's one that he should have stopped. It goes off of him and in. But again, a bit of a defensive breakdown. Soucy getting caught up ice. Othman kind of leaving the center of the ice for Sharangovich, and it's 3-1 Calgary. And then at 17:28, JT Miller gets called for roughing Rasmus Anderson. And Miller was pissed off at Anderson, but dude, like, just don't do it. I feel like he was mad that maybe he thought Anderson embellished or whatever. It's like, get your mind right. I'm just kind of sick of it. I mean, with all of these guys, again, like the main culprits for me in no order is Miller, Lafreniere, Panarin, Zibanejad. And I guess we could throw Fox into as well. I mean, it's a little bit tougher to define with him. But sure, like, we can throw him in there. But not quite as strong right now as those other guys. They are really, they need to be more complementary players on this team. Seriously, like, that would be a good team if they were more second tier. But when you need them to be your top guys, that's where there's going to be problems, and that's what you're seeing. Rangers do kill off that penalty, the JT Miller one. So it's 3-1 going to the third. But the Rangers have their best opportunity. 6 minutes into the period, Laba draws the only Ranger power play. Connor Zary holds him. And what happens? A Mika Zibanejad whiff, which we've seen before. We saw it in Toronto. It's happened numerous other times, in recent seasons with Zibanejad. I don't know why the fuck it does, but it leads to a shortened goal by Blake Coleman, his 4th goal of the season, assisted by Backlund at 6:42. And basically, Zibanejad whiffs, slow to get back because Fox is the only guy back. And you know what? Zibanejad probably could have done a better play as they kind of go back and forth. And it's an easy tap-in goal for Blake Coleman on the feed from Backlund. And it's 4-1 Calgary. So then it's basically lights out at that point. And then just for good measure, Blake Coleman scores again. It's his 5th goal of the season, 2nd of the game, as well from Backlund. And this was one that deflects off of Lafreniere and in. Kind of just an innocent shot by Coleman, goes off Lafreniere, hops up and goes past Shesterkin, and the Flames take a 5-1 lead. They win by that score. Just a really, really bad performance by the Rangers when they couldn't afford to have that happen. So, and the Rangers struggled last year with Calgary. I mean, you think about a real negative turning point in the season last year was them losing to Calgary and Edmonton, where the Rangers, record-wise, they really didn't look that good, but record-wise, they got off to a really good start, coming off of a President's Trophy season. And so things still felt pretty good, even though it was kind of bubbling, the whole Trouba situation, everything like that. But really, the whole memo goes out from Drury after Calgary and Edmonton. And really, to me, one of the worst Ranger performances at home later in the season was against Calgary as well. All that to say, not much has changed. with this Ranger team. As much as, the team looks a lot different than it did a year ago, new coaching staff, you know, you're gonna have to tear this down at some point. That's the reality of the situation. And thank God, even though to me it was the right move and not much of a decision, but good thing they kept that draft pick this year and gave it up last year. Imagine if that was the case. I mean, it would be full on, chaos for the Ranger fan base. I mean, it already is, but even more so if they had given that pick to Pittsburgh, because that may end up being a pretty high draft selection. We'll discuss that later on. It's way too early to even go there, but how could you not think about it, given the state of this team? But look, I hope things turn around. I'm not overly confident that it will. Again, you got the second matchup of this 4-game road trip coming up at Vancouver, the return of JT Miller, and to a much lesser extent, Carson Soucy. This will as well be his first game back in Vancouver. But yeah, I really think that it's going to be tough. Vancouver's coming off of a win in overtime against the Oilers. They're 5-5. I mean, Vancouver's been, average as the record states, but so, I mean, Vancouver's beatable, but the Rangers, you have to come to the reality of it that this is one of the worst teams in the league. And so, while I'm like just already saying it for the title of this episode, it will say NHL-worst Flames, but that's more in the factual sense. Hey, like the Rangers suck. And that is the truth. You really could make the argument that they are the worst team in the league, or certainly one of the worst teams in the league, right? And yeah, it doesn't look good. Doesn't look good. I mean, Chris Drury, I mean, his job security, it shouldn't be great. I mean, I have a bad feeling that Jim Dolan really trusts Drury. I don't think he should. But the roster that he has built, and I understand individual trades, I can look back and I can understand some of them in a nutshell. I really can. But at the end of the day, the roster looks the way it does. Some of the contracts look the way they do moving forward. And that's on Drury. And, the Rangers are going to have to dig out of this. And I think it's going to take quite some time to do so. And I think it's going to have to get worse before it gets better. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Again, I hope to look back on this and say, hey, they needed time to kind of get the new coaching, the new systems in order and things like that, because slow starts do happen and you can get out of them. But to me, this isn't like a slow start. This isn't like, oh, like this is a bad game here and there. No, you could tell right away, at least I could, that the talent on this team is amazingly bad. They're not even drawing power plays, but when they do, they don't really come all that close to even scoring. And you just look at this roster, it's not one of the better ones in the league. The Rangers aren't really that young, and there's not that much in the pipeline. So, hoping for better days, but this is a real rough point for the Rangers. Losers of 3 straight to teams that have the worst records in the league. Minnesota, the Sharks, the Flames. Gets worse and worse and worse. And pretty soon, the Rangers may find themselves right at the bottom of the league standings. I mean, they're already in the bottom 5 right now. So, yep, we'll see what happens in Vancouver. But for now, Rangers lose to the Calgary Flames by a score of 5-1.